we've, just so you realize, have learned how to do trigonometry, like the mini check you just got back, basically without a calculator. Okay, now I don't want you to think that all of a sudden, because we're going to push a couple buttons on the calculator in the next 10 minutes, that everything you just learned is out the window and you somehow become the calculator kid. Hi-ya, calculator kid thinks that he or she can do everything on the calculator. Okay, now the truth is you probably can do a lot of things on there. I'm trying to teach you the theory of math. So again, everything you did on the mini check and everything we've done in the last 3 weeks is not suddenly out the window because we're going to push a couple buttons. Actually, though, the calculator is used to do some things we can't do by hand. We can't do just by theory. And that's honestly just because the angles are not special. If I give you an angle that's not a 30, 60, 90, if I give you an angle that's not a 45, 45, 90, then there still needs to be a way to kind of solve the problem. And again, there is. It's what the calculator does. Let me, as a little bit of a teaser, say to you, do you want to see if you can figure that out? Okay, now you realize what I'm doing here. I'm sort of just giving you a problem that you may or may not have any idea how to solve, but if you're the kind of student that you like to play a little bit, I'll give you about 15 seconds. Do you think you can figure that out? If you're saying thank you but no thank you, then just hang out for a couple seconds. Because I'm kind of setting you up. I'm not setting you up for failure, but I'm setting you up to realize that there's some stuff that we need to understand here. Now, if you got one of these green answers, that may or may not be good. If you didn't get one of those green answers, that also may or may not be good. Depending on where you're at, let's go back a couple steps. Okay, first of all, the angle. And I hope that just in the last 3 weeks of school that you've grown, that you realize, 2 pi over 3, that's an angle. I know it's kind of weird, isn't it? But it's an angle and it's in radians. Now, if you're like, I didn't really realize that was an angle. That's why I'm saying it again, because I want you to realize that 2 pi over 3 is an angle. But it's in radians, and so your calculator needs to be in radians. Okay, now everybody's calculator is a little bit different, but somewhere in your calculator's mode, now on a graphing calculator, I hit the mode button. A lot of you have one of those scientific calculators. You're going to be hitting, I think, the angle button. I think it's an angle button. It's actually at the top of the calculator. It's called DRG. DRG. What it is, though, it's the mode. It's like the angle mode. Okay, so some of you are looking for like DRG, some of you are looking for RAD for radians. And on my calculator, I need to just select radians. Now, I don't want you to hide. So if you're like, I can't find it, just give a holler because I can direct you here. You guys can also help each other if you see a friendly face. Hit your DRG button. Don't hide, you guys. You're going to need to know how to do this. It's actually going to be a little computer activity that you guys are going to do for a few minutes, which will also something that you can't hide. Are you in radians? Yeah. You're just trying to figure it out. Okay, now here's the next thing. Cotangent. Well, if you were trying, because that's what I wanted you to do. I just wanted you to mess around. But if you were messing around and you were trying that button, now that for my calculator is like hitting shift or second tangent. Shift or second tangent. If you tried that, I sort of have, it's actually good news. That's not right. The reason that's good news is because that's the inverse tangent. And when we learn about what's known as an inverse, you'll say, okay, Mr. Hunter, that was good news, because if that was right, then what I'm going to teach you sometime down the road would be bad news because it wouldn't make sense. You say, but what is it? Like, it's cotangent, so what am I supposed to do? Well, do you guys remember back, it was a couple of weeks ago, but, well, it wasn't a couple weeks, but anyway, we talked about that cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. That's the good news. It's the reciprocal. And so you can actually literally do 1 over the tangent. What's happening right now is I am taking 1 divided by tangent. And that's good news because 1 divided by tangent is the reciprocal of tangent, which is cotangent, okay, which is literally how you do this first problem. You can, but I recommend you try to use the pi button. It's not going to, in the end, probably make a huge difference, but it's just a little bit better. Are you okay with where it's at? I use a division sign because on my calculator I don't have a fraction button. I think though if you push the fraction button, it should work. Where's the pi button on those TI-30s?
Oh, found it.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
How are we doing? Are we getting negative 58, negative 0.58? Don't hide. Okay, now if you're like, what does that mean? Don't worry, you're not going to have to write an essay about what that means. It's technically x over y. It's x over y, kind of like back to the theory, but the angle was hard to do. Okay, so we could use a calculator. Let's just try another one. Sort of see if you're catching on. I'm purposely giving you some problems that are a little harder. Now that would be the cosecant of 5 pi over 3.
No, I did divide by.
In degrees.
Oh.
If you're getting negative 115, you're pushing the right buttons, negative 115. So you had to remember that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, right? It's all right. Those definitions back from about a week ago, keep remembering those. X over y, r over x, all the, this one is technically r over y, which is the reciprocal of sine. In a moment, you're going to do a little computer activity using the calculator. So it'll also give you a chance just to make sure you're good with this little learning. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Now, if you've used a calculator before, you probably have gotten an error. Sometimes that means you typed something wrong. Sometimes it means there's something wrong with the math. Okay. Let's dig a little deeper. Now, I said I don't know if you need to write anything down today. It's still up to you, but just watch and then decide if you have to write something down. Before we get the calculators out, you had the ability to find the cotangent of pi over 2. You say, I did? I know, this is a harder class. There's a lot going on here, but sometimes it clicks at some point, and sometimes here it clicks for kids. Now you say, how am I going to find the cotangent of pi over 2? Well, we're going to go back to the beloved.
I love the circle.
Here's why you love it. Okay, you know some points on it, especially these 4. Remember doing this back on the first day of the unit circle. The reason I'm going back to this strategy is because pi over 2, it's an angle. Okay, now if you're like, uh-oh, Okay, remember, you could convert that. Pi over 2 is 90 degrees, and I know we all know where 90 degrees is. So all I'm really asking you to do is to analyze what's going on at 90 degrees. Okay, and I'm kind of filling in the stuff that you should say, yes, I would know that that's 0, 1. So what's the definition of cotangent again? X over y. X over y. Wait, that x? Yep, that x. That y? Yep, that y. Now wait a minute. Last time I checked, 0 divided by 1 is defined. It's 0. So what's going on with the calculator? How come it's giving an error? And well, you kind of heard the adage, garbage in, garbage out. Okay, not making a statement at all about any of you, but we've told the calculator to do garbage. We told the calculator to do the tangent of pi over 2. You say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the tangent of pi over 2 is y over x. Wait, that y over that x? What's happening is we're telling the calculator to do something that's undefined. And so it's having trouble then figuring out 1 over or the reciprocal of that. Okay, and the best it can do is say, can't do it. But the truth is you can do it. Now, if you're like, what am I going to do? I thought you said I could use my calculator. Okay, I'm just bringing up a situation. It's only going to happen 4 places. Those 4 places are any place that you have a 0. And those 4 places are these spots. So in other words, if I ask you to do an angle that could be done on the unit circle, you should use the unit circle. Again, because those are the places where you could get a 0. And we all know that when you get a 0, you have the chance for an undefined. Okay, it's not something that's going to happen every day. I just want to make you aware of it. Okay, so the correct answer for this is actually 0. Let's do one more, and then I'm going to give you a little computer activity to sort of just mess around for a few minutes before we review. Okay. So yes, if I sort of give you permission and say use a calculator for this problem, the decimals are also expected. The decimals are expected. It's a good question. Remember what you did on your mini check. You weren't using decimals at all. That's because you were doing it with theory. Okay. Honestly, there's going to be one question on the test where you're going to use your calculator. I want you to get it right, and it'll say decimals are fine. Every other question is going to be like what you've been studying for the last many weeks. How you doing here? You know, it's not supposed to be hard, but you have to be aware. You have to be aware. Okay? Sometimes it's just one of those things that we forget. You're like, you jump into a problem, and you're like, oh, shoot, what mode am I in? So you have to be in degree mode. Okay? You have to be in degree mode to get negative 94. What if I ask you to do the sine of 160? Okay, pretty easy stuff. I know you guys can type numbers into your calculator, but you're in degrees, and so you get 34. Now, I really am doing this problem that we can talk one more time about something that's going to be on your test tomorrow. And you should feel like you've heard this before. I hope you're not getting tired of it. But what's the significance of negative 94 and 0.34? It's a point on the unit circle at It's a point on the unit circle at 160 degrees. Does it sound like something that you've actually typed before? A couple days ago, you typed that. Remember, you're going to see that kind of question. If you're like, what's the answer again? It's a point on the unit circle at 160 degrees. The only thing I would really add to that, it's the point, okay? Because that's the only point that you're ever going to get at 160. Now, it's a decimal because 160 is not a common number, but it still matches with that theory. On your computer, on Classroom, there's a link to a real simple computer activity. I don't know if it's going to take you 5 or 10 minutes, but it's to make sure that it's basically to make sure that you're pushing the right buttons, because I want you to know how to use your calculator. As I said a few minutes ago, don't hide. If you're like, yeah, something's not really working correctly, I'll watch what you're typing in. Okay. The idea here is I want all of you to be 100% fine with your calculator. And I used to have an extension cord, but just do whatever you got to do. I'm using the extension cord over here.